In the heart of the Mojave Desert, where summer temperatures routinely exceed 115 degrees and the nearest civilization sits 40 miles away, stands a 25,000 square foot fortress that shouldn't exist. Built with $12 million in cash during the height of the Great Depression, this palace consumed the final years of a dying man's life and represented everything American society claimed to despise about organized crime. Yet today, 70 years after its creator's death, the estate generates $8 million annually and employs 200 people in a region where economic opportunity remains scarce. The casino king who built it died alone in its master bedroom, disgraced and broken, but his palace survived when every other monument to his era crumbled into desert sand. Benjamin "Benny" Siegel arrived in Las Vegas in 1938 with nothing but a tailored suit and a reputation for violence that made grown men nervous. Born in 1906 to Ukrainian Jewish immigrants in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, Siegel grew up in tenements where 6 families shared a single bathroom. His father worked 16-hour days in a sweatshop, earning $11 per week. By age 14, Siegel was running a protection racket on pushcart vendors, charging them 50 cents weekly to avoid having their goods accidentally destroyed. By 18, he'd formed a partnership with Meyer Lansky that would revolutionize organized crime in America. Siegel possessed 3 qualities that distinguished him from common thugs. He was strikingly handsome, with blue eyes and jet-black hair that women found irresistible. He was pathologically fearless, willing to personally execute anyone who crossed him. And he understood that respectability could be purchased with the right investments. Between 1920 and 1937, Siegel and Lansky built a bootlegging empire worth $50 million, controlling liquor distribution across the eastern seaboard. They moved into narcotics, gambling, and labor racketeering. Siegel personally killed at least 12 men, though associates claimed the number exceeded 30. He wore custom-made suits from London, drove a Duesenberg Model J, and cultivated friendships with Hollywood stars like George Raft and Cary Grant. But by 1937, Siegel faced a problem that money couldn't solve. Thomas Dewey's Special Prosecutor's Office was systematically dismantling New York's organized crime infrastructure. Lucky Luciano had been sentenced to 30 to 50 years. Dutch Schultz was dead. Federal investigators had connected Siegel to 4 murders, and witnesses were talking. The organization needed new territory, somewhere beyond Eastern law enforcement's reach. The syndicate's accountants identified California as the solution, with its booming defense industry and wealthy movie executives hungry for illegal gambling. Lansky sent Siegel west with $500,000 and a mandate: establish control before rival families could entrench themselves. Siegel settled in Los Angeles and immediately began cultivating Hollywood's elite. He rented a mansion in Beverly Hills, joined exclusive clubs, and threw parties attended by Jean Harlow, Clark Gable, and Howard Hughes. He opened illegal casinos in Santa Monica and Beverly Hills, paying off local police with briefcases containing $10,000 monthly. By 1940, Siegel's California operations generated $3 million annually, but he remained restless, sensing that Los Angeles represented only a stepping stone to something greater. He made frequent trips to Las Vegas, a dusty railroad town of 8,400 residents where gambling had been legal since 1931. What Siegel saw in Las Vegas in 1941 bewildered his associates. The town consisted of a few blocks of downtown casinos catering to construction workers from Boulder Dam. The largest establishment, the Apache Hotel, contained 40 rooms and a casino with 6 table games. Summer heat drove residents indoors by 10 in the morning. Water remained scarce. The town existed 80 miles from Los Angeles across dangerous desert highways. Yet Siegel became obsessed with a vision others considered delusional. He would build a luxury resort in the desert that would attract wealthy Californians the way Monte Carlo attracted European aristocrats. The war interrupted Siegel's plans. Between 1942 and 1945, he focused on expanding West Coast rackets, profiting from military contracts and black market goods. His personal fortune grew to $7 million. But the vision of the desert resort consumed his thoughts. He studied European casinos, particularly the casino at Monte Carlo, becoming obsessed with their elegance and profitability. He believed Las Vegas's legal gambling created an unprecedented opportunity, a chance to build an empire in plain sight, laundering illegal profits through legitimate gaming revenue. After the war ended, Siegel moved decisively. In November 1945, Siegel learned that a small-time California club owner named Billy Wilkerson had purchased 40 acres on Highway 91, 2 miles south of downtown Las Vegas. Wilkerson planned to build a hotel casino called the Flamingo, funded by $600,000 he'd saved from his Sunset Strip nightclubs. Construction had barely begun when Siegel approached Wilkerson with a proposal. Siegel would provide financing through syndicate connections in exchange for controlling interest. Wilkerson, desperate for capital and terrified of Siegel's reputation, accepted. It was the last independent decision Wilkerson would make. Siegel transformed Wilkerson's modest plans into something unprecedented. The Flamingo would contain 105 rooms, each with private baths and air conditioning. Luxuries even fine hotels rarely provided. The casino would span 5,000 square feet with 21 table games. The property would include a showroom seating 300, a restaurant serving gourmet food, a swimming pool, tennis courts, and manicured gardens requiring 1,000 gallons of daily irrigation. Siegel hired architect George Vernon Russell, who designed the Beverly Hills Hotel and understood luxury. Russell was 53, suffering from early-stage emphysema, and needed Siegel's $50,000 fee to fund his retirement. His design philosophy emphasized old-world elegance adapted to desert conditions, thick walls for insulation, extensive landscaping to create oases, and imported materials that signaled wealth. Siegel's decorator, Tom Douglas, brought a different sensibility. At 38, Douglas had worked on MGM film sets and understood theatrical impact. He insisted on flamingo pink exterior walls, a decision that mortified Russell but delighted Siegel. Douglas specified imported Italian marble for bathrooms, crystal chandeliers from Austria, and custom furniture from France. He designed the casino to disorient visitors. No clocks, no windows, indirect lighting that made time meaningless. Douglas believed gambling required atmosphere, not just games. His vision would define Las Vegas aesthetics for decades. Construction began in December 1945, immediately encountering problems that would plague the project for 2 years. Las Vegas lacked infrastructure for a development of the Flamingo's scale. Every board, brick, and fixture had to be trucked from Los Angeles or beyond. Building materials remained scarce due to post-war shortages, forcing Siegel to pay premium prices. He spent $40,000 on black market steel beams, $75,000 on copper piping, and $150,000 on tiles from Italy. The desert heat slowed construction. Workers labored from 5 to 10 in the morning, then resumed at 4 in the afternoon. Siegel's perfectionism compounded delays. When tiles arrived from Italy in the wrong shade of pink, he ordered new ones, costing $30,000 and 6 weeks. When the swimming pool's depth seemed inadequate, he had it dug 4 feet deeper at a cost of $45,000. The casino floor received Siegel's obsessive attention. He specified Wilton carpeting so thick that gamblers' footsteps made no sound. He installed a cooling system that maintained temperature at exactly 68 degrees, requiring machinery that cost $200,000, more than most Las Vegas casinos spent on their entire properties. The 21 gaming tables were custom-built from Honduran mahogany, each costing $3,000. The chairs featured leather upholstery and were weighted to feel substantial. Siegel believed every detail contributed to the illusion of class, and class attracted money. The showroom and restaurant represented equal investments. Siegel hired designer Jimmy Lake to create a space that rivaled anything in Hollywood. Lake installed a retractable stage, theatrical lighting worth $75,000, and a sound system that cost $50,000. The restaurant's kitchen contained commercial-grade equipment capable of serving 500 guests nightly. Siegel hired French chef Henri Leglisse, away from a Beverly Hills establishment with a $30,000 annual salary, astronomical for 1946. The wine cellar stocked 5,000 bottles worth $100,000. Siegel envisioned the Flamingo as a complete resort where wealthy visitors would spend days, not hours. By October 1946, costs had reached $3 million, 5 times Siegel's initial projection. The syndicate partners who'd financed construction grew concerned. Meyer Lansky flew to Las Vegas to review the books and found alarming discrepancies. Contractors reported being paid for materials that never arrived. Invoices showed charges for labor on days when construction sites sat empty. Lansky suspected Siegel was skimming, perhaps as much as $500,000, though he couldn't prove it. More troubling, Lansky discovered Siegel had given his girlfriend, Virginia Hill, authority to approve expenditures. Hill had no construction experience but was approving 6-figure purchases. Lansky warned Siegel that their partners demanded explanations. Siegel responded by accelerating construction, convinced that the Flamingo's opening would validate everything. The Flamingo opened on December 26, 1946, in a rainstorm that turned the unpaved parking lot into mud. Siegel had invited Hollywood's elite, chartering flights from Los Angeles. Weather grounded most planes. Only George Raft, Charles Coburn, and a handful of others appeared. The casino opened with dealers in tuxedos, but almost no customers. The showroom, designed for 300, attracted fewer than 100 guests. The restaurant served gourmet meals to empty tables. Worse, the hotel rooms remained unfinished. Guests had nowhere to stay. Those who won at the tables immediately left for downtown hotels, taking their winnings. The Flamingo lost $300,000 in its first week. Siegel closed the casino in late January 1947 to complete construction. The Flamingo reopened in March 1947 with completed rooms and renewed marketing. This time, business improved. Gamblers from Los Angeles discovered that the Flamingo's luxury justified the desert drive. The casino grossed $250,000 in March and $400,000 in April. Siegel's vision appeared vindicated, but the syndicate's patience had expired. Costs had reached $6 million with no path to profitability. Financial irregularities suggested Siegel had stolen from his partners. On June 20, 1947, an assassin fired 9 shots through the front window of Virginia Hill's Beverly Hills mansion, where Siegel was reading a newspaper. 2 bullets struck Siegel's head, killing him instantly. He was 41 years old. His body was discovered by Hill's brother, who'd been in the kitchen. The murder remains officially unsolved. The Flamingo survived Siegel's death, but barely. Within hours of the assassination, syndicate representatives arrived at the casino and assumed control. They installed Gus Greenbaum, a Phoenix bookmaker, as manager. Greenbaum implemented cost controls Siegel had resisted, cutting staff by 30% and eliminating money-losing amenities. He focused exclusively on casino revenue, understanding that hotel rooms and restaurants existed only to keep gamblers on property. Under Greenbaum's management, the Flamingo turned profitable in late 1947, grossing $4 million annually by 1950. But Greenbaum himself was murdered in 1958, his throat cut in his Phoenix home, another reminder that the casino business attracted violence. The pattern that destroyed Siegel and Greenbaum repeated across Las Vegas through the 1950s and 1960s. The Thunderbird opened in 1948, built with $3.5 million from syndicate sources, and became profitable within months. The Desert Inn followed in 1950, costing $4.5 million and setting new luxury standards. The Sands opened in 1952, the Dunes in 1955. Each represented millions in investment and generated millions in annual profit. But federal investigators tracked the money flowing through these casinos, connecting it to organized crime in Chicago, Kansas City, and Miami. The FBI maintained permanent surveillance on major casinos, photographing known criminals and documenting meetings. The IRS audited casino owners annually, searching for unreported income. The problem intensified with Nevada's 1955 creation of the Gaming Control Board, which required casino owners to obtain licenses. The board could deny licenses to anyone with criminal associations. Suddenly, the men who'd built Las Vegas faced a choice: sell their properties or risk criminal prosecution. Many chose to sell. Howard Hughes, the eccentric billionaire, began purchasing casinos in 1966, buying the Desert Inn, the Sands, and eventually 4 others for a combined $100 million. Hughes brought corporate legitimacy to an industry previously dominated by criminals. By 1970, publicly traded corporations operated 10 of Las Vegas's 16 major casinos. The era of independent casino kings had ended. But something emerged during those chaotic early years that historians still struggle to explain. While construction records show Siegel spent $6 million on the Flamingo, financial investigators later discovered additional expenditures that didn't appear in official ledgers. Between 1946 and 1947, Siegel made cash payments totaling $12 million to contractors, suppliers, and unknown recipients. Some money funded the Flamingo, but at least $4 million remained unaccounted for. Virginia Hill, questioned repeatedly by investigators, insisted she knew nothing about Siegel's finances. Meyer Lansky, who outlived Siegel by 36 years, never discussed the missing funds. The question lingered: what did Siegel build with that money? The answer emerged accidentally in 1983 when a Bureau of Land Management survey team discovered an unlisted structure 40 miles northwest of Las Vegas. The surveyors, mapping boundaries for a proposed solar facility, identified a 12-acre parcel surrounded by an 8-foot concrete wall. No roads led to the property. No utilities serviced it. The surveyors radioed their supervisor, who checked records and found the land had been purchased in February 1947 by a Delaware corporation that no longer existed. The supervisor dispatched investigators, who used helicopters to access the site. What they found shocked everyone. Behind the concrete wall stood a single-story residence sprawling across 25,000 square feet. The structure followed a U-shaped design wrapped around a central courtyard with a swimming pool, fountains, and dead gardens. Exterior walls consisted of 18-inch reinforced concrete painted flamingo pink. Every window featured steel shutters. The main entrance included a vault door weighing 2,000 pounds. The building contained 42 rooms, including 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a commercial kitchen, a 3,000-square-foot ballroom, a movie theater, a casino with 6 gaming tables, and a 10,000-bottle wine cellar. Most rooms remained furnished with period-appropriate pieces, showing advanced decay from heat and abandonment. The basement revealed the structure's true purpose. Accessible only through a hidden panel in the master bedroom's closet, the basement contained reinforced chambers designed as vaults. Steel doors secured each chamber. Inside, investigators found the remains of what had been extensive cash reserves, bills so deteriorated by heat and moisture they'd become unreadable. They found jewelry cases, empty safe deposit boxes, and ledgers documenting transactions between 1946 and 1947. The ledgers, written in code, showed cash deposits totaling $8 million and withdrawals for construction supplies, labor, and bribes to local officials. The investigators concluded Siegel had built the compound as a personal fortress, a retreat where he could hide from enemies or law enforcement. The architectural details supported this theory. The building lacked phone lines. Communication would have required radio. The water system relied on 3 10,000-gallon cisterns, fed by a well drilling 800 feet into desert aquifer. Solar panels on the roof, advanced for 1947, provided electricity. The compound could sustain 6 people for 6 months without outside contact. The casino room seemed designed for entertainment rather than profit, a place where Siegel could host associates in complete privacy. The movie theater contained projection equipment and film reels from the 1940s. The wine cellar's $100,000 inventory had evaporated in the heat. The master bedroom featured a king-sized bed, a marble bathroom with gold fixtures, and a walk-in closet containing 12 custom suits. But the most revealing discovery came in the ballroom. Across one wall, someone had painted a mural depicting Las Vegas in 20 years, a vision of neon signs, towering hotels, and crowds filling streets where empty desert had existed in 1947. The painting showed the Flamingo at the center of a city that didn't exist, but that Siegel had somehow imagined. Investigators dated the mural to early 1947, months before Siegel's death. The vision proved eerily accurate. Las Vegas in 1967 looked remarkably similar to Siegel's painting, suggesting he'd understood where the city was headed even as his associates considered him delusional. Federal and state authorities debated what to do with the compound. Nevada claimed ownership, arguing the original corporate title had lapsed. The property held no monetary value. Demolition costs would exceed any sale price. Environmental groups opposed demolition, concerned about disturbing desert habitat. Historians argued for preservation as a unique artifact of organized crime history. In 1985, Nevada quietly transferred the property to a newly created private foundation, the Desert Heritage Trust, with a mandate to preserve the structure and eventually open it to limited public access. The trust faced immediate challenges. The compound required extensive restoration. Heat had warped wooden floors, moisture had damaged plaster, thieves had stripped copper piping and fixtures. The trust's board, composed of retired law enforcement officials, historians and community leaders, estimated restoration would cost $2 million. They had no funding source. For 5 years, the compound sat untouched while the trust sought grants and donors. The breakthrough came in 1990, when Martin Scorsese visited while researching his film Casino. Scorsese toured the compound, was fascinated by its history, and mentioned it in interviews. Media attention brought curiosity and donors. Between 1991 and 1995, the trust raised $3.5 million through a combination of grants, private donations, and a $1 million allocation from Nevada's Tourism Board. Restoration focused on authenticity. Craftsmen replaced damaged materials with period-appropriate alternatives. The trust hired forensic historians to research original furnishings, tracking down manufacturers and recreating pieces that had been stolen. They restored the swimming pool, replanting gardens with drought-resistant species. They installed climate control to prevent further heat damage. They reinforced the structure against desert winds and flash floods. By 1996, the compound was ready for its first visitors. The trust implemented a strict access model. The compound would open to visitors only by advanced reservation, limited to 20 people per tour. Tours would occur weekly, requiring four-wheel drive vehicles to navigate the unmarked desert roads leading to the property. The cost, $500 per person. Critics called the price prohibitive. The trust argued it reflected the cost of operating a facility in such a remote location and would limit attendance to those seriously interested in the history. They were unprepared for the response. The first year's tours sold out within a week. By 1998, the trust had a 2-year waiting list. Visitors came for different reasons. History enthusiasts wanted to see an authentic artifact from organized crime's heyday. Architecture students studied the compound's advanced engineering. True crime fans sought connection to Siegel's violent life, but most visitors came for something harder to define, a glimpse of a hidden world, a secret that powerful men had built and then abandoned. The compound offered what Las Vegas's corporate casinos no longer could: authenticity, darkness, and the thrill of trespassing into forbidden space. The trust understood this appeal and crafted tours that emphasized the compound's sinister history. The tour begins in the courtyard, where guides explain the property's discovery. They describe Siegel's final months, his paranoia, his belief that enemies were closing in. They walk visitors through the main residence, pointing out details: the vault door that required 3 people to open, the reinforced windows designed to withstand gunfire, the escape tunnel leading from the master bedroom to the desert floor 200 yards away. They show the casino room where Siegel allegedly hosted high-stakes games with Meyer Lansky, Lucky Luciano, and other syndicate leaders. They display the wine cellar, now empty, but still impressive in scale. They screen footage in the movie theater, showing newsreels from 1947 reporting Siegel's murder. The tour culminates in the basement vault rooms. Guides describe the cash found there, the ledgers documenting criminal transactions, and the jewelry that disappeared before investigators arrived. They explain that Siegel likely intended the compound as insurance, a place to flee if the Flamingo failed, and his partners turned on him. The irony is obvious. Siegel built a fortress to protect himself from the violence he'd inflicted on others, but he died in a Beverly Hills mansion where he felt safe. The compound became his tomb without a body. By 2000, the Desert Heritage Trust had refined its operations. Annual visitors had grown to 1,000, generating $500,000 in revenue, but overhead remained high. Maintaining the compound required full-time staff living on site. Utilities cost $80,000 annually. Insurance, given the remote location, cost $120,000. The trust was breaking even but accumulating no reserve funds. Board members worried about long-term sustainability. Then they made a discovery that would transform everything. During routine maintenance in 2001, workers found a locked room they'd missed during restoration. The room, hidden behind a false wall in the basement, contained filing cabinets with documents Siegel had accumulated. Most were mundane: construction invoices, payroll records, property deeds. But one filing cabinet contained correspondence between Siegel and Meyer Lansky discussing syndicate operations, planned murders, and bribery schemes. The letters provided direct evidence of organized crime activities that historians had long suspected, but couldn't prove. The trust contacted federal authorities, who reviewed the documents and determined they held historical rather than prosecutorial value. Statutes of limitation had expired, and all named participants were dead. The trust consulted legal experts and concluded they could display the documents under educational fair use protections. They created a separate exhibit room showcasing the letters behind security glass, with explanatory text providing context. They marketed the exhibit as unprecedented access to organized crime's inner workings. The response exceeded expectations. Academic researchers flew from across the country to study the letters. Documentary filmmakers requested access. Major museums inquired about borrowing documents for exhibitions. The trust charged researchers $1,000 per day for access, with proceeds funding preservation. Between 2002 and 2005, the documents generated $800,000 in revenue. The trust expanded its programming. They began hosting annual symposiums, bringing together law enforcement historians, organized crime researchers, and former federal agents. These two-day events, held at the compound, featured lectures during the day and evening discussions around the courtyard pool. Attendance was limited to 50 people, charged $2,500 each. The symposiums sold out annually, attracting attendees from 12 countries. The trust added specialty tours focused on architecture, desert ecology, and forensic analysis of the crime scene evidence still present in the master bedroom. Bloodstains on the wall, where Siegel reportedly killed an associate in 1947. By 2010, the compound was generating $1.8 million annually and employing 35 people. The trust had created a sustainable model, proving that even the darkest history could be preserved profitably. Board members documented their approach in case studies used by heritage organizations worldwide. The key insight: scarcity creates value. By limiting access and charging premium prices, they'd made the compound economically viable while maintaining integrity. Mass tourism would have destroyed what made the property special. Exclusivity preserved it. This success attracted criticism from populists who argued that important history shouldn't be accessible only to the wealthy. The trust responded by partnering with UNLV to create virtual tours available free online. They funded scholarships bringing low-income high school students to the compound for educational programs. They published open-access research papers on their website. These efforts mollified some critics but couldn't satisfy everyone. The fundamental tension remained: preservation costs money, and generating revenue requires restricting access. The trust had chosen preservation over democratization. The compound structure today remains privately managed by the Desert Heritage Trust, a 501c3 non-profit governed by a 15-member board. The board includes historians, former FBI agents who'd investigated Las Vegas casinos, and descendants of law enforcement officials who'd tracked Siegel. No family members of Siegel or his associates serve on the board, a deliberate choice to maintain objectivity. The trust owns the property outright, funded by endowment and operating revenue. This model contrasts sharply with most historic sites, which rely on government funding or corporate sponsorship. The trust's independence allows them to present history without political or commercial interference. For Las Vegas locals, the compound represents something beyond tourism revenue. In a city built on reinvention, where historic casinos are demolished whenever profit margins decline, the compound endures as a reminder of where everything started. The Flamingo still operates on the Strip, but it's been rebuilt 3 times and bears no resemblance to Siegel's vision. The Sands, the Dunes, the Thunderbird, all demolished in the 1990s to make room for mega resorts. The compound alone survives as authentic evidence of Las Vegas's founding era. Local historians use it as a teaching tool, bringing students to see how the city began, not as family-friendly entertainment, but as a criminal enterprise. For preservation scholars, the compound validates an unconventional approach. Traditional preservation emphasizes public access and educational programming. The trust prioritizes conservation over access, arguing that some sites are too fragile or contextually sensitive for mass tourism. Their model has influenced other organizations managing difficult histories, sites of mass violence, criminal activity, or moral complexity. The key is transparency. The trust doesn't whitewash Siegel's crimes or romanticize organized crime. They present the compound as evidence of violence, greed, and ultimately failure. Siegel died violently and young. His fortress protected nothing, but the building itself, stripped of its creator's intent, now serves educational purposes Siegel never imagined. For those who study organized crime's transformation into corporate enterprise, the compound illuminates a crucial transition. Siegel represented crime's last romantic generation, violent, charismatic, and doomed. Men like Siegel built Las Vegas but couldn't survive in it. Their successors, accountants, lawyers, corporate executives, created the modern gaming industry. Those men built no secret fortresses because they needed none. They hid in plain sight, protected by legitimate business structures. The compound exists because Siegel couldn't make that transition. His paranoia was justified, but his solution was obsolete. You can't hide from the future by building walls in the desert. Consider the fate of comparable properties built by Siegel's contemporaries. Al Capone's Miami Beach mansion, purchased in 1928 for $40,000, passed through multiple owners after his 1947 death and was demolished in 1952. Meyer Lansky maintained apartments in Miami, New York, and Havana, but owned no singular estate worth preserving. Lucky Luciano died in Italy in 1962. His Naples apartment was converted into office space. Frank Costello lived in Manhattan apartments his entire life, leaving no architectural legacy. Bugsy Siegel built the only structure from that era that survives in original form, and he built it for the wrong reasons in the wrong location. Yet those mistakes enabled its preservation. Had Siegel built his fortress in Beverly Hills or Miami, it would have been torn down for development decades ago. The person who made preservation possible was actually Virginia Hill, though she never intended to. Hill inherited Siegel's estate after his death, including his interest in the Delaware corporation that owned the compound. Hill, terrified of Siegel's former associates and hounded by federal investigators, fled to Europe in 1948. She never returned to America and never sold the compound. Likely she forgot it existed. When Hill committed suicide in Austria in 1966, the property passed to her sister, who also ignored it. The land sat untouched for 17 years, protected by obscurity and Nevada's bureaucratic inertia. Had Siegel's estate been properly administered, the compound would have been sold and likely demolished. Hill's negligence preserved it. Today, visitors stand in the compound's courtyard as temperatures exceed 110 degrees, surrounded by 18-inch concrete walls, and struggle to understand why anyone would build here. Guides explain that Siegel wasn't building for comfort. He was building for invisibility, for control, for the illusion of safety. The compound worked exactly as designed. Law enforcement never found it during Siegel's lifetime. But safety proved illusory. The fortress couldn't protect him because the danger came from within his organization, from partners who concluded Siegel had become a liability. The compound stands as a monument to paranoia justified but misdirected. The gardens have been replanted with species that thrive in desert heat. The pool is maintained and occasionally used for special events. The air conditioning runs year-round, powered by solar panels far more efficient than those Siegel installed. The vault door opens smoothly on oiled hinges. The casino tables are covered with protective cloth. The movie theater screens documentary footage on digital projectors. The wine cellar hosts tastings featuring vintages from 1947. The compound lives again, but its purpose has inverted. Siegel built it to hide from history. The trust opened it to reveal history. In the master bedroom, bloodstains still mark the floor where Siegel allegedly killed an associate in March 1947, one of the compound's last violent acts before Siegel's own murder 3 months later. Forensic analysis confirmed the blood is human and dates to the 1940s. The trust preserved the stains under protective coating, a brutal but honest acknowledgement of what happened here. Some visitors find this disturbing. Others appreciate the refusal to sanitize the past. The compound forces confrontation with violence that sanitized museum exhibits often avoid. Blood on the floor makes the history real in ways that text panels and photographs cannot. The lesson of Siegel's compound ultimately transcends organized crime history. It demonstrates that preservation requires economic models matching content. Mass tourism works for battlefields and presidential homes. Exclusive access works for sites that are fragile, remote, or thematically dark. The compound succeeded because the trust recognized that 1,000 visitors paying $500 each create more sustainable revenue than 10,000 visitors paying $50. Scarcity preserves value, and value funds preservation. Conventional wisdom argues that important history should be accessible to everyone. But accessibility costs money, and some sites cannot accommodate crowds without losing what makes them significant. The compound stands today because Benny Siegel was paranoid, Virginia Hill was negligent, and a handful of historians recognized that even criminal history deserves preservation. These weren't inevitable outcomes. The compound could have been demolished, sold, forgotten. That it survives demonstrates how preservation often depends on accident, obscurity, and delayed discovery. The Desert Heritage Trust transformed those accidents into deliberate strategy, creating a model other organizations have replicated. The compound proves that sustainability requires courage to charge what preservation costs, even when critics call it elitism. Walk through the compound now and you'll find silence broken only by air conditioning and occasional desert wind. The flamingo pink walls have been restored to their original garish shade. The vault door stands open, no longer protecting anything of value. The escape tunnel leads nowhere. The mural in the ballroom depicts a city that came true, built by people who destroyed the man who imagined it. Siegel saw the future, but couldn't survive long enough to inhabit it. His fortress remains no longer protecting anything but itself, transformed from hideout to monument. The compound's survival required Siegel's death, Hill's abandonment, and 70 years of benign neglect. Preservation demanded patience that Siegel never possessed. And that's the paradox. The only structure from organized crime's romantic era that survives exists because its creator failed to use it, failed to escape, failed to survive. Siegel built the compound as insurance against the violence he'd inflicted on others. That violence found him anyway, in a Beverly Hills mansion, reading a newspaper, comfortable and exposed. The fortress stood empty, protecting nothing, until historians arrived 4 decades later and recognized its value. What was meant to hide secrets now reveals them. What was built for one man's survival now employs 200 people and educates thousands. The compound endures not because of Siegel's vision, but despite it, preserved by the very exposure he feared, sustained by the public curiosity he tried to avoid. In the desert heat behind flamingo pink walls, history survives by becoming its opposite.